Oh, and it doesn't work. I don't know.
Okay.
But it doesn't work.
Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to introduce Shawn, such a great guy, and has become a friend. So, born in Philadelphia, Shawn Baron Pinckney was raised around a group of women who used the act of fabricating clothes as a means of forging and participating in community. He began his career in the late 80s, early 90s, after being inspired by the customization of clothing championed by hip hop and street culture of that time. He studied tailoring at the Craft Fashion Institute of Philadelphia. And at his first fashion show at the age of 20, he received a glowing review by critic Roy Campbell and was awarded the title of Best New Designer for the Eastern Regional Division of NAFAD. Since then, he has dedicated his practice to creating wearable art and has worked as a designer in a wide range of capacities, including serving private clientele through custom design, working with various theaters and opera houses in Delaware and Philadelphia, and creating unique works of his own. At the foundation of Shawn Baron Pinckney's practice is a reverence for the transformative power of clothing. Through his work, clothing becomes a metaphor for the ability to transcend boundaries. He uses garments as a means of lowering defenses in the viewer, which then allows for the facilitation of difficult conversations around gender, race, and class. His work juxtaposes symbolically loaded fabrics with traditional cuts to form a conversation about how clothing can change our perspective of societally imposed definitions of identity. His work has been published domestically and internationally, including in Tableau Vivant, Vigor magazine, Mami magazine, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Delaware News Journal. Mr. Pinckney has been a guest lecturer at the University of Pennsylvania for the Art of Couture series. And most recently, he was invited to create original designs that were exhibited in conjunction with the Ann Lowe American Couturier at the Winterthur Museum. He is a resident of Arden. Please welcome Shawn Baron Pinckney.
Thank you, Jennifer. Hope you can all hear me. Is this good? No? It's the bow. Send away. Is that better? All right.
We turn it up. Or little box. Nothing.
This.
Yeah, maybe put it up.
That's good.
Yes, that works.
The power of the bow. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Good evening. My name is Shawn Baron Pinckney. Welcome. We're going to talk today about Ann Lowe and the couture legacy that she left us all. I would like to start with saying, again, thank you for being here, my friends and neighbors and new faces that I have not seen before. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass around this book. It's what I created during the process of creating, sketching, researching Ann Lowe for the 3 pieces that I put in Winterthur. And it included in that are my process. Yeah. So Ann Lowe was an amazing artist, amazing craftsperson. She was born at a time that was not kind to her craft, her gender, or her color, but yet she prevailed, and we're still talking about her all these years later. Ann Lowe was born in 1898. when you think about that, and you think about today, 2024, we're still talking about this woman who crafted a legacy out of cloth, thread, beads, bows, and flowers. I first want to talk about the words couture, legacy, and craft. Thank you, Jen. No? All right, it's two fingers up, okay. Yep, that's it. So the word couture is French. It's a French word. I first discovered couture in my mother's sewing pattern. She would buy Vogue, Butterick, Simplicity. And all the instructions were for French. They were in French and they were in English. English was sew, all the seam allowances were 5/8. The French instructions were couture, which was sew. I didn't understand that at the time. I was a little guy looking at the patterns, looking at the pictures, the sketches, and the instructions. But I kept seeing this word, the word was couture. Ann Lowe was not known as a couturier because couturiers were only known in Paris and France, haute couturiers. Ann Lowe's an American, born in 1898, born of a slave lineage. She became free. So free people, slaves, did not understand. They didn't know the high world of couture, or so we're told. Ann Lowe made it. She completely changed that. Her biggest commission was this dress that's behind me. It's the dress that she made for Jacqueline Kennedy's wedding to John Kennedy. Jacqueline Onassis, I'm sorry. Augenslass, I'm sorry. She made this dress. Jackie wanted something more to the time in the 60s. She wanted something more simple. She didn't want a big ball gown, but she was marrying a senator, right? It's a high profile wedding. She came from a family that had means. So her mother and Jack's father curated how this dress should look because it was all about them. It was all about, she's getting married, of course, but they did a good job to get her to be married to Jack, right? So it had to look a certain way. Now, Jackie's mother had already known of Anne because she made clothes for Anne. Anne made clothes for her and Jackie's sisters for the debutante gowns. And Anne was known as that, But they also went to Paris to the couture. They were one of those families that had the means to do that. So it's interesting that they chose Ann Lowe to produce this dress. A beautiful silk taffeta dress, lots of couture treatments, all done by Anne's hands. Again, Ann Lowe was born in 1898. She was born of a slave lineage, yet she produced this amazing couture. There's a difference between couture, which I said was French for dressmaking, right, for sewing, and haute couture. Haute couture is high fashion. This image is of Christian Dior by Gian Galliano, 1997, his debut collection. The gown that is worn with the hat is worn by a model named Deborah Shaw, who comes from West Philadelphia. She graced the couture as a model in the 90s. She was in every show. The dress to the poison green dress, I don't know if you noticed this dress, but this is the dress that Nicole Kidman wore to the Oscars. It was a dress that said that this dress gave her the power to be bigger than her husband at this time. Before she wore this dress, Nicole was more demure. She was more quiet in the press's eyes. But her red hair and this poison green Dior dress with lingerie, all embroidered on the back and sable trimming, it elevated her past the status that was given to her, right? As the woman who is standing behind this strong man. But this poison green silk charmeuse that was embroidered changed Nicole's her trajectory forever. Eventually, she left Tom and created her own destiny from the power of couture. The difference here that I want to point out is that all of these trimmings, the embroidery on the poison green dress, the embroidery on the train of the black silk taffeta trumpet gown. All of those things were done by a house known as Lesage, that the couturiers, Balmain, Dior, Valentino, they all send these things out to get embroidered. They have a feather place, they have a corset maker, they have a flower maker. Ann Lowe had none of that. So every creation that she made it with her own in-house staff. She trained the staff, and then they produced all these wares. She didn't have a backer as the haute couture had. The haute couture had big backers and big money still today they do. Anne did not have that. She had ingenuity, she had craft, she had the legacy, and the legacy taught her how to be able to produce all these different items that go onto any of the looks that she produced. So that's the difference between haute couture and couture. Now, it's interesting that it wasn't until last year that she was even known as a couturier. She was always known as a dressmaker. It wasn't until Winterthur, who was brave. They were brave. It was the first time that all Anne's dresses were in one place. Because like other designers and not other couturiers, Anne did not have a backer, so she could not produce spring, summer, fall, winter, as the couturiers did at that time. They did a collection in spring, summer, they did one in fall, winter. Anne could only produce one-ofs. So each client that came to her, like Jackie's wedding dress, they got a one-of piece. When she worked for stores, those stores would take her labels out of the dresses that she made. That was, it wasn't completely explicit in the contract, but she would make the dresses, deliver them, and before they went on the floor, her labels were taken out of them. So she never had the ability to become an haute couturier to have the backing that these other people have, yet she did the same level of work right here in America. Right here. When I look at the word legacy, legacy is an amount of money or property left to someone in a will. It's the long-lasting impact of particular events, actions, etc., that took place in the past or a person's life. Ann Lowe's mother died in the making of a dress. She died in the process of making a dress for a client. Before that, Anne had saw her grandmother and mother make clothing, right? And she started making fabric flowers out of the scraps that they would use. After they, finished the gown, they would have the remnants. And any sewer knows you save all your remnants. No matter how big the pile, no matter how big the bag, you pay to put it in storage each month, but you save your remnants, right? You don't run out of room, you just keep it in the trunk. You don't tell people the remnants are there. But there's always a bag of remnants. I've worked in costuming, I've worked in bridal shops, I've worked in tailor shops, and there's always a box or a corner that's filled with remnants from things that were made maybe decades ago. So Anne, her legacy started with remnants. Her legacy started with the cloth that was left over. And from that cloth, she began fashioning fabric flowers. This image shows a dress that Ann Lowe did in the 60s, the early 60s, this black tulle with the silk, green silk and pink silk flowers, right? The suit up to the image up to the top of it is the garment, one of the garments that I made for Winterthur for the exhibition. And the bottom images of Pierre Balmain in 2023. So we can see from 1960 to 2023, her legacy still it's happening. The silk flowers, the handmade, the custom. Again, she was not professionally taught. She learned this at the floor of her parents. She learned this as they were cutting and throwing away pieces and showing her how to put things together, how to thread a needle, how to cut fabric on the grain, what fabrics went with what temperature to use when you're pressing, how to steam, how to let a bias hem hang for 3 days because you have to get the true hem in there once it hangs. So all of these techniques she got, not from Paris, not from the haute couture, but she got it right at her parents' knees, at her mother's knees. There's a long-lasting impact of what we see in our time now of craft. We know something good. If you live long enough, you can tell the difference between something cheap and something good. Even if you don't purchase expensive, you can still, you could tell it. You can tell when someone knows how to cook from the smell or when they don't. There's things that we just learn as we grow, right? Legacy. The impact of the event of her mother passing catapulted her into a space that she was born for. She had to finish the garments that her mother was making after she died. She finished them and she kept right on going. She made silk flowers until they got her all the way to the White House. I think that's amazing when you use your hands to craft your legacy, to craft your intention. So we find today that there are heritage brands. There are brands, Louis Vuitton, Prada, Hermes, Goyard. All of those brands, when you look at their history, they started off making one thing, be it a saddle, be it luggage. Those big conglomerates that we see today started off just like Ann. I often wonder what it would be like if she had the same opportunities with Lowe, and there is a house of Lowe, L-O-E-W, but if Lowe, Ann Lowe, if she had the same opportunity, would she be a heritage brand? She's still influencing me. She influences fashion. She influences people that see the dresses. What I loved about the exhibition at Winterthur was that when people had a chance to view the collection there, they see all those dresses, and they're like, my God, like I can't believe that she did all of this. And I think what's interesting is that they didn't know, some people didn't hear about her until 2023. She's accessible. You can Google her, right? But if you don't have that backing that says, hey, look at me. Hey, look at what I did. If you don't have the funding to do that, we know the household, we know Dior, we know Prada, we know Chanel. We can, everybody knows that Chanel, the flower, the camellia flower for Chanel is it. Chanel #5 was the best-selling perfume in the world. All of those houses had the ability to have someone back them so that their legacy of craft are able to still be visible today, still carried in the highest end of stores, right? Still treasured if you go to a vintage shop, if you come across a Chanel piece or you come across a Dior or any label you come across, you feel like you hit gold, right? Because I'm not at Neiman's purchasing, I'm purchasing it right here. I like it, it's my color, it fits me well, and it's $30. Opposed to 3,000, right? So there's something about legacy and craft in itself, the things that we learn, the things that we practice with our hands, those things can catapult us to a different type of living. Now, there's a good legacy, and then there's a bad legacy. The one thing that Ann did not inherit was a good business acumen. And she did not have a good backer. She didn't have what Dior had. She didn't have what Balmain had. She didn't have that. She didn't have people to come in and say, hey, we know you're an artist. We have the money. We'll get the textile mills together. We'll get everybody in with you. We'll build with you. And we'll support you and we'll help you grow. She didn't have that. So all of the work that she did, the creativity, it was amazing, right? This craft, but there's also the craft of finances, right? There's a way that you look at finances. There's people who are able to artistically use finances to build them, to save them, to invest them, to make more off of them. That's a craft I'm still learning. I wish they taught me that in school, right? This is what you do with finances. This is how you grow finances, right? So it was a two-part thing here. So you're making these beautiful clothing, you have these clients, you have this name, but each deal she lost money on. Each deal. So when she was in the department stores, they took a huge chunk of her money. She did all of the work, she made the dresses, and then she didn't make any money. And they were okay with that. But as the saying goes, that's business, right? So what I learned from that part of her legacy was, I'm very ironclad. There's a contract. There's steps to that contract. I'm not just going to start making a garment for you and I don't really know you, or you don't really know me, right? So for me, it's the thing of, I'm going to protect myself and I'm going to protect you, because once we buy cloth, once we take measurements, once we do the muslin fitting, once we do, the choices, all of those things, you've now spent money, right? You now made an investment. So my job from the legacy of, and Ann's not the only person that I know, a lot of people that I trained up under who did not have the ability for business. So I had to learn, I backed into being successful with dressmaking. And that's a part of the legacy that I'm happy about, because along with the notoriety, there's people that have the name who go bankrupt, who lose with all of the red carpet gowns that they have and the shows that they do and the movies that they dress. You still find that there are creative people like Ann who did not have a good legacy with the financial piece. So I'm very excited that I have people in my life that I can talk to about that, so I don't go on with that legacy. The fabric flowers now, I want to learn more about that, because then I can charge more. Right? I can charge more of that. So the word heritage, like I spoke of with Louis Vuitton and Balenciaga and Balmain, it denotes a traditional brand or product regarded as emblematic of fine craftsmanship. Again, if you've gone into Saks Fifth Avenue, if you've gone into Bonwit Teller or Neiman Marcus, or the stores, I don't know, as a kid, we would go into Philadelphia, we had Bonwit Teller on the square, and I'll never forget that Bonwit Teller had, I think it was a lilac bouquet, which was a part of their signage. So the purple lilacs and Bonwit Teller, you knew it was quality. You knew when you were going, you could smell the quality almost going in, right? You could smell it. So there's something about heritage. I think what blew me away about Ann, with her not being known well, right? Once those gowns went up at Winterthur, once that signage went up on 95 and everywhere else, once Vogue got a hold of it, it's like everybody always knew that it was quality, but they just refused the heritage piece, right? So if Jackie would have mentioned her name at her wedding, it would have been a completely different story for Ann. But there's a quiet power that we hold when we're in control, right? There's a small, quiet power, right? And the thing that I have found as a designer also is that people won't come to me not because I'm a virtual nobody to them, but they won't come to me because it doesn't have the same heritage. When you're wearing Gucci, it's heritage. Oh my God, you must be successful. You're either successful or you're still struggling to pay your bills because you buy a Gucci. It's one of the two, right? One of the two. So I think a lot about, wow, if Jackie would have said, hey, Ann Lowe made my wedding gown. Not only my wedding gown, she made my debutante dress, she made my sister's debutante dress. She's been sewing for my mother for years. Her name is Ann Lowe. Look her up. We'd have been having a different conversation today about Ann Lowe. But there's something about that. And what I find is that people that I have dressed who have been people of means, it wasn't necessarily me that they had a problem with. It was the fact that I have to be able to brag to my friends who I'm wearing. And if you're a virtual nobody, then it doesn't mean anything, right? But if I said I just came back from Paris and I'm in the latest Balenciaga, then oh my God, like I'm the head of it, right? So there's a old, as I researched couture clients, when I first heard the word couture, I started researching couture clients and what that meant. And there was only a few people in the world that could afford it. And the reason why there's only a few people that could afford it is the cloth alone could be thousands of dollars a yard. The embroidery can be $20,000, $30,000 just from the embroidery, right? And there was this kind of anonymity, and I didn't understand it at first, but it wasn't until I became a little older and wiser and I realized that the world was not as warm and fuzzy as I thought it was. So on the front row of those couture shows were dictators' wives. There were people who had been killing people and destroying their lives in villages and towns so that their girlfriend can buy a $10,000 blouse. And that's the ugly part of the legacy, right? And we still do that. We still have these hierarchies. I want to go back a little bit to couture and haute couture. There's still this thing today that says only high fashion is done in Paris. Or if you're in Rome and you're Valentino, there's couture houses in Rome, but the real ones are only in Paris, right? There's a body that governs it, and you can only have that there. And for years, I would think to myself, well, I guess that the fabric just magically cuts itself and sews itself and steams itself, because at the end of the day, when you sit behind a sewing machine, there's a pedal, and if the pedal is not, there used to be a wheel, if not, I think my grandmother had one that had the wheel. Yeah, she had that, right? Yeah. If you don't press that, nothing's going to get sewn. If you have needle and thread and you don't thread the needle and it's not going to happen, right? So it just baffled me how human beings, we have these hierarchies to make ourselves feel better. So this blouse that I have is $300, right? But mine is better because it was $10,000. And that makes me feel better than you, right? So that's why we've had for such a long time that American designers were not known as couturiers. When I was a kid, though, when I first started studying, there were couturiers. There was Arnold Scassi, who dressed Aretha Franklin. There was Bob Mackie. There were, there's a gentleman, John, I think his name, he was a New York designer. And he was called an American. There was an article that Bazaar had in the late 80s about American couturiers at the time. John Anthony was his name. And these men made amazing gowns, but they still weren't known as couturiers because they weren't from France, and it wasn't high. Now, it was high here, but this is a difference with high fashion in Paris and the high fashion here. If a starlet, if Beyonce is seen in a custom couture dress by Givenchy, Givenchy's clients who have, say Beyonce has $1 million, Givenchy's clients has $100 million. They won't buy the same dress that she wore because I can't be seen in that. We're not the same. It's not a status. So it never stops, is what I'm saying. No matter if you put a silk flower on something or a piece of lace, it just doesn't stop. So I can only imagine what Anne had to deal with in the face of dressing these women who came to her, who looked amazing, because a part of craft is not only just the sewing of a thing or the creating of a thing, but it's the planning of how to produce it. And that is way different from the creative piece. There's parts of me that wish that there was someone in her life who was able to kind of explain through her craft the financial piece. Her son did very well until he was killed. And when he was killed in a car accident, everything went away for her. She just studied on the craft piece. Her craftsmanship is her legacy and her heritage. Again, we're still talking about Anne today because of the fabric flowers that she adorned just about everything with. I want to read this excerpt from this book, Ann Lowe, by Pierre Angela Belton. One of the only books I could find about Ann Lowe when I began my research. Everything else was a paper dial book or little articles here and there, but there was no comprehensive, there was no book. This was about it, right? And this reads, chapter 2, A Designer is Born. My mother said I came out of her womb ready to sew, Ann Lowe. On December 14th, 1898, Ann Lowe was born in Clayton, Alabama. She was the great-granddaughter of a skilled seamstress slave and a white plantation owner. Her mixed-race grandmother, Georgia Tompkins, made clothes for her plantation mistress before she was given clemency from slavery after being purchased by a freed man and carpenter named George Cole. General Cole. Georgia and General married in 1860. A year later, they had a daughter named Jane. Jane grew up watching her mother sew, and by the time she was 11 years old, she was exceptionally skilled with embroidery. To help her family earn money, Jane would assist her mother with dressmaking for Clayton's prominent society women. At 16, Jane married Ann's father, Jack Lowe. Jack, Jane, Georgia, and General moved to Montgomery, Alabama, looking for a better life. Within a year, Jane and Georgia had established themselves as society dressmakers in Montgomery, Alabama. So her grandmother, her mother, and then her. And then they moved and began dressing more prominent people. But I find it interesting, they were slaves, right? So we were taught at one point that people of color were not as smart as, they weren't as skilled. They had to be showed things, taught things. They were not the smartest things out there, right? I go back to the hierarchy. Couture, haute couture. No matter what she would have done, no matter how well it would have been, that conversation was still in the mind, right? One of the designers, B. Michael, was at Winterthur also. And B. Michael, I don't know if you know who B. Michael is. If you don't, look him up. He's dressed as Cicely Tyson. I think he's back at Winterthur, or he was just at Winterthur. He's going to be back there for his book. But he said that the industry does not have a place for him for Black luxury. Now, the fact that we put a color on luxury scares me a little bit. I like a fine pebble grain bag. I like shoes that still have the stitching on the bottom, you know, the ones, the old school ones. Yeah, I like those a lot. I like a good water goblet. There's certain things I just like that are, for me, luxury, right? A nice roast chicken, done perfectly well, roast sweet potatoes, some garlic broccoli rabe. That's quality, right? But I'm not supposed to know that because I'm brown. So even today, we go in stores and the same rules that were used to keep Ann where she was are still in place. There's no place for B. Michael, an amazing couturier, because there's no place for Black luxury there. Craft. Is a work of objects made by hand. It's skill in carrying out one's work, and it's the members of a skilled profession. Pictured here is Society's Best Kept Secret, which was named after the very first image we saw of the article in Ann. Ann was named that because all the society people that she went to didn't talk too much about where they got their dresses from. I mean, everybody knew in their circles, but they kept it a secret. I remember when I had new clients, when I first started out, they would like, oh my God, I don't want anybody else to wear this. I'm not gonna tell anybody about you. And I'm going, please don't do that. Please tell everybody, as many as you can. Yeah, please do. So the craft, closely in this piece, there's Balenciaga Calvary twill. I go to a store called Mood Fabrics. If you watch Project Runway goes to Mood Fabrics, right? I found Mood Fabrics when I was in Philadelphia managing a fabric store for 5 years. I didn't know why I was there until now. I mean, you know, I got like, oh, that's why I was supposed to be at that place. But it got me all of the contacts in New York and Los Angeles. Who sells the best wool? Who sells good lace? Where do you get silks from? So I understand now why I had to be in that place. This piece is a wool with a Couture lace embroidery, a black file, I think it's a rayon file, if I'm not mistaken, and custom flowers from M&S Smallsburg and Manhattan, who have been doing flowers for, I think, almost 100 years, if I'm not mistaken. Still doing them the same way. I think the dyes they use are the same. Like Ann, I had to find my way. I didn't have the finances to have a big house do embroidery for me, or to make feathers for me, or to do custom fabric for me, or print, or give me, you know, make custom lace for me. But out there in the world that we now in, they have something called dead stock. They have something that designers will sell to help their bottom line. And they will sell fabric from previous collections to stores like Mood. So I was able to find Balenciaga Calvary Twill. And I was super excited about that because I wanted the tuxedo to be a uniform, but yet a flower. Based on Ann's legacy of craft, her legacy of creating flowers from her mother's scraps, remnants, that was seared in my mind. I wanted my three pieces to mimic flowers. I wanted them to be shaped like flowers so that when a woman walked, she would be feminine in this piece. It wouldn't be overpowering to her. I used a template from a vintage 60s pattern that I altered because it was the arm's eye was gone, so it was a raglan sleeve. It was all cut in one, the little dart at the bust line. So it was comfortable. If it was a day of being bloated, it was okay because this is going to do it for you. It's going to give you that shape. And then the trouser, which I love, I'm great. I love making trousers, but the trouser has a slight boot cut. So it's completely fitted throughout the knee and then just a pop at the bottom. And then at each side of that trouser is that Couture lace again. This came from the inspiration of Ann Lowe in 2023. So this was made in Arden in August of 2023. So I had a client order a type of from that piece. We made a tailcoat. So the front of this only stops at the waist and then it's just tails in the back. The original piece has the tulips on the side, the two tulip petals on the side. What I love about Ann's legacy is women still want to feel feminine, right? Still want to have a good scent and a perfume, something feeling good against your skin when you put it on. You don't want it to be rough, right? You want it to feel luxurious and you want it to feel special. And this client felt that way in this piece. So Ann inspired me, and the piece was created in Arden, showed at Winterthur, and here it's worn at the Foundation Louis Vuitton, the Marc Rothko exhibition in Paris. Super excited for me that Ann's legacy was able to still do what it was doing all the way back then in the 60s when she was making candles. I was able to go and see Ann's dresses before they were put on display, before they were dressed. So this is in Winterthur where they're looking at all of the craftsmanship here. Inside this dress, the image up to your upper right, if I'm not mistaken, that bodice, it's all hand stitched inside of there. There's a piece of a plastic ring here under the bust and on the sides. And you know, if you ever worn a strapless dress that you do this all the time, it's just like a shimmy, like you're just doing a twist all the time. What Ann did was she looped a piece of elastic in there that went under your bust and then fastened in the back. Now, better gowns today have a corselet inside that the way that you keep that is you just make it tighter at the hip. I'm sorry, at the waist. But Ann also allowed the wearer not to have to worry about a Spanx or a strapless bra. It's all boned inside of here. The image over to your left, the top image, this is a mixed lace gown. So there's Couture, there's Chantilly, Alençon in here. When I saw this blew me away the most because it was in the 60s, but today, Givenchy, Christian Lacroix, all the big names from my time of first knowing what couture was and studying haute couture in my 20s. You know, you think every generation thinks what they know is new. Nobody's ever done this before, right? So I see this dress from 1963 or 64, and it's all here. And I'm like, oh, wait, hold it. Her legacy is that she was forward thinking.
So I mean, think about it. She could not get a bank account because she was a woman, right? Women couldn't have bank accounts at certain times, at certain points in her life. You gotta remember, she's born in 1898, right? So certain things she just couldn't do. She didn't have backers. She didn't have people sew into her because she was a person of color. It blows my mind where this stuff comes from for her. I would love to ask her, how did you come up with this? Like, how did you come up with these treatments that are completely haute couture and still relevant today? Mixed lace is still relevant today. Helen Mirren wore a La Croix gown to the Oscars. I forgot which year it was, but she said that her bosom felt like little angels were inside of her cups because of how fine it was sewn. I'm looking at this dress, and I can only imagine what that must feel like against your skin, that you can put yourself in it and not have to worry about, you can just move, jump up and down. Little angels. The slide, the image underneath is just the underlayer of, again, embroidery, but what she did on, if you look at, you really can't see, the edge is so fine, the stitches are so fine. I mean, the handwork that she did, and I can only imagine what her hands must have felt like, because if you're a sewer, you know, you get all those needle calluses up around here and over here, if you're, you know, with the thimble, and you do all that. And she had poor vision also. At one point, she lost the sight in one of her eyes, right? Right? But all these details, she did all these details constantly. Each piece was something different. Each piece she breathed craft into. She thought about, how am I going to execute this dress? How am I going to, what's the placement of the flowers? How is she going to pee in this dress? How do you go to the bathroom with this gown on? Those are all things that we think about, right? The bottom dress, the bottom look is a sari that a client bought back fabric, and then she fashioned this amazing gown out of the sari fabric, and she used the border to make bows, and she cut little leaves out of each. The sari had a small leaf pattern on it, and in the trimming, and so she cut that out and overcast each petal and then reapplied it to the dress. These are all things done in haute couture, right? And again, no training, right? So it blows my mind that craft is embedded. Her mother saw her mother do it, and then Anne saw them both do it. So she constantly was just looking at movement and shape and form, and you grab up underneath and steam with the hand to get that curve. You know, when you do an arm's eye, how do you press and get, you know, that cap? How do you steam that cap so that it falls into that place that it should never go into because it's bigger than the hole, but yet I steam it and it gets some shape. That's legacy. Those are things that you see, things that you feel. Anne had a legacy of craft. These are pieces that show also the different variations of her. The top piece is a famous gown that was in an Ebony magazine article. And if you look to the left of it, your left of it, you'll see the Chantilly logo in this particular piece. Anne worked for many different companies, right? And she often changed her labels. She understood that early on, dresses that she had made were then, her identity was taken out of them. You could look at it and tell it was an Ann Lowe dress. She used certain colors, certain treatments, but her identity was taken away from that. When the labels were taken out, it's almost like your child, and you look at your child's birth certificate and the name has been scraped off because you gave birth to this piece with your hands and your mind and your eyes and your limbs, right? You breathed into this. I told Jennifer, I picked the gown up from Winterthur, and it went into my storage with the rest of my pieces. And when I brought it back to the house for this, I said to the gal, I talked to them. I said, oh, you're home. You haven't been home since August, right? And this is my first time actually taking it out today. So yeah, I'm like, oh, hi, how are you? So imagine somebody, I go to take this gown and somebody says, he's still in my dress, and they take my label out of there, right? I don't know if I would have had the courage to deal with it the way Ann did. She had probably no choice. The laws are a little bit harsher. You know, I'm not violent by any stretch of the imagination, but I think I probably would have had a conniption if you took my label out of my dress and you said that you made it. That would be a problem for me. Ann's legacy is in silk and velvet. It's in trapunto. It's in hand stitch roses. It's in velvet bows. It's in colors that are not normal to go together, which is another mark of a couturier. We put things together that don't always work to someone else, because the goal is that you want your client to move and be a piece of art in your piece. It's a conversation. You want them to feel special in your piece, but you also want them to embody the spirit that you created together with it. So clients come to the couturier and they say, hey, I'm going to this thing and I'm thinking this would look great on me. Usually there's a trunk show or a show, and you get a program, and the program has the exits, all the numbers of the pieces that are there. It has a description of all the pieces, what they're made from. It tells you a brief description of the shape, balloon, wattu, pencil, A-line, and it tells you the fabrications, right? So then the couturier and the client, they go, okay, let's make an appointment. They say, I like number 15, I like exit 15. And I go, okay, exit 15, that'll work for you, yeah. We may have to alter it because the model, of course, is just up and down. And the reason that usually models are smaller is because it takes less cloth. So you want to keep the pricing down for the presentation. If you're making 35 looks and you're using silk gazar and it's $35 a yard, and one dress takes 20 yards, that's just $700 for the textile, just that particular piece, not the underpinnings, not the thread, anything else. So that's one of the reasons why they have always chosen models that were smaller in size. My belief, though, is this: no matter what size you are, if you want to look good, you're gonna look good, right? And if I have to make a size 22 or 24, my very first couture client, she's passed away now. Her name was Sandra. And Sandra was about as dark and ebony as the bustier of this dress. And she was about 6'3", and she had to be at least 300 pounds, right? And she came to me and she said, I heard some things about you. I was very young at the time. And I would like for you to sew for me. And I'm like, okay. I'm looking at her and I'm a short guy. And I'm going, wow, okay. And what came out of her mouth next? Because I had already summed up that I'm going to make her suits, dresses, and coats, right? And I'm going to use black and navy and brown. I'll put some embellishments on them because that's, you're trained. If you want to look small, you wear a dark color. That's not always true. Sandra said, I have a ball to go to, and I was thinking about, now remember, she's tall, I gave you proportions, and she taught me the most valuable lesson. She said, I want lime green silk chiffon. So we did lime green silk chiffon, and then we did fuchsia pink, and then we did royal blue, and Sandra had this presence. She knew quality, she could wear quality, and she was quality. And she taught me a valuable lesson about appearance and about what I think what I would, fashion is, it's small, everything's small. You have to be small in fashion. You don't eat a lot. You just, nip a little bit because you have to fit in your clothes. And it's better to fit in your clothes than to be healthy. Or in the 60s, they just smoked cigarettes all the time. Everybody smoked, we'll eat a little bit, be in a voluminous Dior ball gown, and that's about it. There was a couture client, Foy, her last name was Foy. She had the largest amount of Dior couture. And when she passed away, I'm forgetting her first name, it was in my head, I forgot it. When she passed away, they began talking about her home, her Fifth Avenue apartment. She had a home in upstate New York. She had a place in London. Thelma Foy. Her husband was the head of Chrysler at the time, if I'm not mistaken. And they talked about how she hid candy all around the house because she wouldn't eat. She was so into those couture gowns that were this size, right? And it meant something. And she had if you go to the Met, most of the Dior pieces there are from her. We'll see every piece. There's a lot of pieces from Mrs. Foy. But I think about the lifestyle, right? So you can't eat. You could wear this amazing thing, but you can't eat. What Ann did, what I do, is I like to meet people and appreciate them for who they are and where they are, right? I don't judge it. Sandra taught me a lesson. Sandra was my client until she passed away. And she was happy with me, and I was happy with her. I was happy that she was able to go past what people thought beauty was. And she was able to teach me that as a designer also. Ann was able to dress many different shapes, many different sizes, and she did it impeccably. Impeccably. This gown is called an Ode to Janie, Ann's mother. It was inspired by eyelet. It should be in the book that's going around. There's an eyelet, a cotton eyelet organdy cocktail dress from the 60s that has velvet running throughout, the velvet bows. And the interesting part for me, I'm a child of the 70s, born in 1971. So when I grew up, we had garanimals, right? So the shirt had the little giraffe tag on it. You go to the store, your parent get the pant with the giraffe tag on it. You got an outfit, right? So my job was to create only three cohesive looks that were inspired by Ann Lowe. But I go back to Ann did not have full collections. She had one-offs. So it was hard. Dior has had the trapeze collections. All the shapes were trapeze. He had the New Look collection. All the shapes were New Look. Valentino did a white collection. Everything was white. In my head, I'm like, well, we don't have all the same colors anywhere. And then on top of it, every room in Winterthur is a different theme and color. So then how do I put these pieces together to give honor to Ann, also my aesthetics, and then fulfill my contract properly with Winterthur so they'll have me back? So this is an Ode to Janie. It's a black silk Duchess corset. It has a cream silk embroidered eyelet skirt, and it is adorned with bows. Fabrics are from New York. The eyelet is from Butterfly Fabrics. The Duchess satin, I believe, is Mood, maybe. The velvet bows are Etsy. Yeah. They're Etsy. All right. Same way. It's Etsy. I was able to, hopefully, from the feedback that I got, it was a good homage to Ann. In my Garanimo sense, though, there are two pieces here. Because at the end of the day, you can wear the top as a dress and then build a corset or a jacket or a blouse to go with the skirt or a black turtleneck. You know, so I have the garanimals are an aesthetic for me because I believe that if you're going to invest in something, you should be able to go into your closet and take it out and wear it a lot. Not just go pet it and look at it. This is my baby. I wore this 30 years ago. Like, no, you should wear it. Let's wear it. Let's wear it. Here it is at display at Winterthur with the gifts. I think it worked well with the red and the yellow. Okay. This piece is called Couturier of the Year, 1961, I believe, which Anne was named in a newspaper article in New York. So I name all the pieces also. I want to make sure that I give homage. I'm always naming clothes and talking to them again. This is a Couture inset lace from New York, from B&J Fabrics, custom flowers again, washed acetate velvet from Hobby Lobby. Is it Hobby Lobby? Wait, no, wait. On 273, what's the new store that's there? It's not Joann's, across the street from Joann's. Is it Hobby Lobby? It's only there for about a couple of years. It's in Michael's, but that's where it's from. I wanted to make sure that everything that I did had a base from where I'm at also. So it always has to have, if I was in Philadelphia, I would purchase fabric in Philadelphia. I want to make sure that I purchase something so that the people who are coming behind me, when when my mother sewed, there were students that came to the house to use her sewing machine. That's what got me here, watching them. So I want to be sure that I never know who I'm going to run into. If I see somebody in Joann's, if I see a student in Hobby Lobby, if I see someone at the paint store, the fabric store, just playing with thrift stores, I want to be able to share the same way that things were shared with me. The way that Anne shared. I think that's my last one. Yes, that's my last one. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Yes, yes.
I just want to say, thank you so much for the presentation. I went to go see it and I got a tour of the show, and my favorite stories from the show, or from the tour, one was she made debutante gowns, and she made the backs dip low in the back because she didn't want the boys to get dirty hands on her dresses.
Absolutely.
And then the other story was about Jacqueline Kennedy's wedding, how she had the person above her, the apartment above her, they had water spilled down, rusted water spilled, and it ruined all the dresses in the wedding. Yeah. Yeah. And they fell.
The way that, we're going to get
Do you know that story?
Yes, yes, yes. Well, what I love again, it goes to the how do you pee in a dress, right? When you're building, you're thinking about everything, and you're also doing your best to protect your work because you don't want it to be damaged. And if you could prevent it from being damaged, which was lowering the backs, which made perfect sense. If you're holding someone dancing at that time, they dance, this way, you want to make sure that the small of the back, that there's nothing impeded there, or that he didn't just have punch or some wine and just, yeah. So it's that process. And again, with craft, there's the designing of a thing, but then it's how am I going to build this? What do I need to build it? How am I going to build it? What is it going to do after I've built it? I always tell design students whenever I have a chance to speak with them, creating in your sketchbook and on your dress form is great, but your dress form can't talk to you. So you have to put it on a real person so that you can get feedback. So they can say, hey, this side of me is a little bit shorter than the other side, or I can't move this arm a certain way. It's all those conversations like lowering the back.
Most for detail on the back because they keep dancing and that's what we see.
That's the most visual.
Back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But the other story about the dresses being ruined, that she had to remake all of the wedding dresses that were bridesmaids and Jackie's dress.
Yes. And
Only showed up the day of with them. It didn't tell them what had happened. And she had to pay for that herself.
and the other thing too is that she you want to take this?
It's like, just, you just talk and you can repeat some of the questions so that our Zoom audience.
So the conversation we're having now is about Jackie's wedding gown being damaged and some of the other bridesmaids' dresses being damaged, and the amount of time that she took to rebuild all of that. So yeah, the dresses were damaged, but all that time was lost. Thankfully, she was able to already have in place the pattern for the flowers, the depth of the ruffle, all the details. So she had the blueprint already. But if she didn't have the blueprint, there wouldn't have been a wedding. If she didn't already build those pieces and had those patterns hanging up, there wouldn't have been a wedding. Yeah. Yeah. Do we have, yes. Yes, hi. Hi.
You're talking about patronage and about people supporting some of the big houses. So there's you probably know about this platform called Patreon, and that a lot of musicians are on there. I've seen script writers who are in Hollywood on TV, and what it is it's an opportunity for artists to get patrons on a little tiny scale. So for $10 a month, I can patronize a particular musician and I might get a free 30-minute concert for all his patrons, that kind of thing. So they're writers, sculptors, musicians, composers as well as musicians. And I was wondering if if you knew about designers and couturiers and dressmakers who also are using that Patreon.
So I've never heard of Patreon until right this moment. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it. Yeah.
I'll tell you about it more
Yeah.
later.
So thank you. Thank you.
That's an opportunity for
Thank you.
artists to get patronage from a lot of
So-
grassroots.
You pay like a nominal amount for a
Yes.
subscription, but it supports the cause, and then they can, so a lot of people during COVID who maybe were journalists for bigger
Yes.
things, but were fearful of, saying certain things and losing their job, they could go on to Patreon and, still get their content out there, but without overbearing editors.
Yes.
Politics.
Yes. I think it's wonderful.
Array gets patronage there, the
Yeah.
writer,
Oh, wow.
as well as small.
Yes. The one thing I ran into during COVID, which everyone ran into, is that when you are a business that has to physically be in a space with people, it's different. One of the reasons why people didn't talk a lot about Ann's work was because she was delivering a special product, and they could also get the price lower. But she was in their homes, at the time where you would be in a home doing a fitting, or you would travel. The big houses do that, they travel. But I love the idea of Patreon, that's the name of it. I love the idea of it. It's a conversation that I have had locally, wherever I've lived at with other artists, and it's about coming together. Like the big houses, a lot of houses have come together and created their own production places, right? I know a lot of people that make amazing wares, who are amazing craftspeople, right? The problem that we have is that we need business people to come in and say, hey, we're not going to judge you. We want to understand you. We don't want to steal from you. We need that conversation to come close. I think Patreon would be a great place to possibly find somebody who has business acumen, a good business sense, right? And partner with creatives need help with business. They need help. It's if you are waiting for a red carpet moment or a celebrity moment, all the celebrities that I have met, who I've been introduced to the dress, they all wanted it for free. Every last one of them. And I said, no, thank you. It would be great to meet an investment banker or a person, a textile mill owner. That's what Dior, they had those people like you're talking about on Patreon who would help me. That's why they're the names that they are, because they had big business come in and partner with them. And creatives that's what we need. If we're going to, and I mean everyday people when I say this, I'm not talking about wealthy people who need to wear things well made so they can impress their friends or feel better about themselves. I'm not judging that. But I mean, in my neighborhood in North Philadelphia, I walked past a home, and this home had a window. In the window, it had a sign that said invisible mending. Now, years later, I'm a kid walking down past this, and I see the sign. Years later, I get a job with my dad. My dad worked at Boyd's in Philadelphia, and I got a job as a porter when I was 16. And we had to take suits to the invisible mender. It was the same woman who lived around the corner from me and down the street. She was the only person in Philadelphia at that time who did exquisite invisible mending. If we could get just everyday people, if we could, you know, I love that we see the Met Gala. I love that we see the Oscars. I love that. But I talk to people so much that say, I don't have anywhere to go to wear that. And I'm going, you just put it on. Go to the store. Buy some grapes or something. Put it on. Because it's not about the people, it's about you feeling good about you and the fact that you deserve it, because we're told, again, from couture to high fashion and craft, we're taught that a certain person only wears this thing. But then you have Patreon that's saying, hey, I have the funding here. If you're a writer, we can do this. If you're, you know, it's the same thing. We need that in the craft world. Louis Vuitton has decided last year that they're going to build a space just for craftspeople, amateurs, novices, and professionals. Chanel, before Lagerfeld passed away decades ago, he bought all of the houses that I talked about: the embroidery house, the corset maker, the hat maker, the millinery, the feather place, the buttons, the shoes. Lagerfeld made sure that Chanel bought those crafts places, and they're still in existence today because they made the investment into them, right? Because without them, without the craftspeople, there's no legacy. We're not going to have any more good clothes after a while. Moths do get hungry. After a while, we're not going to have any good garments, right? Or things to look back on. Sally, there she is. Sally and Alan gifted me Victorian clothing. I am so excited because I get to see craft in front of me. I get to see it, right? It's not like going to Target. It's a completely different thing. Yeah. So I hope that place that we can support our craftspeople. It may cost a little bit more, but support them, because if they teach the skill, right, our infrastructures are going to be much more better financially. I see people that need their pants hemmed all the time. All the time. If you just know how to hem pants, that's a whole business. Just go stand outside, go to the Wawa, and you need your pants hemmed. And I see people walking in their pants all the time. All the time.
You're divulging, but for, altering men's pants when they get to the age where they've lost their butt. I mean, I really see that as a design problem. You know, so, right.
As a non,
And
as a non-butt happer, suspenders are your friend. I'm wearing these today and they're at my natural waistline, which is at my belly button, right? I'm used to, the 90s gave us low rise. And then skinny, I think skinny was created in hell. Because after a while, I was walking around like, what am I doing? I can't breathe, I can't walk. They're too tight. When I sit down, my knees hurt. So the solution is, so if they're falling down, you don't want to make the waist tighter. You want to anchor them somewhere else. So then you go into really nice suspenders. Amazon. Amazon. Yeah.
and there's the way, the age thing as well. Don't, suspenders, looking old.
I wear suspenders.
Right,
I wear 'em.
but
Yeah.
you're not an old guy.
No, but so you want to make sure that you get, you want to make sure that, I think the thing is the fit, right? So Ann's clients came to her because she had good fitting techniques. Their gowns didn't move, their suits didn't move, their dresses didn't move. She anchored them. And a lot of our clothing, if we look at our bodies, if your shoulder stops here naturally, your shirt seam shouldn't stop down there. If your shoulder's up here, you don't buy a shirt here because your belly's bigger. You got to figure out, we have to figure out where couturiers live. And then you talk to those people. or you go, there used to be shoppers in stores. I don't know if they kind of got rid of all the staff now. So there used to be people that used to be able to talk to you through your purchase and what it looks good and what, how you should wear it. So I think if I have uniforms. I have things that look good on me, and that's what I wear. I have colors that look good on me, that's what I wear. If you buy suspenders that are going to look good on him, and if his trousers are too big, invest in a couple of pair of pants that will be more fitted to him where they need to be fitted at, and still wear the suspenders. Yeah.
I want to thank you. It's been lovely hearing what you had to say and dealing with the struggle of producing, being a maker, and getting credit and even recompense for it. My question is, and I hope I can get it out right, having watched, now for decades, what's fashion, what's couture, what's haute couture, all the, I think that culturally, to me, it seems, we've kind of like flipped couture a little bit on its head. I think that costuming and couture have gotten kind of melded. And Bob Mackie to me is costuming. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, absolutely.
And bandage dresses is costuming,
Yes.
although I know where they came from.
Yes.
I think of Vivienne Westwood.
Yes.
And I wonder, as a person who makes things with scraps, if one can create, in your opinion, couture, haute couture for like 10-50. Do you know what I mean? Can that be done without, raiments at $1,000 a yard and simple, I'm not talking jazz,
Yes.
but and like I said, I mean, Vivienne Westwood lived with safety pins.
Yes.
So can you do it for 10-50?
You can. My book is somewhere. I don't know if you've seen the book yet, but in the book, some price lists of what things cost me just in the fabrics, not the labor, just the fabrics. These are from Etsy.
Familiar.
That's it. So the thing is that high fashion said that it's better, but it's still silk, organza. So we have to reckon in ourselves what style is to us, right? Not fashion. I like fashion, but I'm more style. I don't.
That's kind of the
Yeah.
rhetoric, yeah.
Yeah, I make clothing. A person said to me before, he was a designer, and he said to me, "You make clothes for the wife, I make clothes for the mistress." I'm like, okay. I like class. I like subtle expression. Most of my imagery as a child watching women was in church. So there was a hat or a dress and a scarf and a coat and gloves and shoes. They all went together. And there was a lap scarf, but they weren't half dressed, right? What fashion has done as a business, it has dictated to us how we should feel about ourselves based on what we could afford to wear. The best suit that I have is a $3 suit from the thrift store. It's the best suit that I have. The cloth is the best that I've seen. It has hair canvas inside of it. It's made beautifully. It's impeccable. I've had it for over 15 years. It's $3.
Yeah, but the original person who bought it paid $400.
Probably
You know
not.
what I'm saying? I mean,
But-
that's a concept on
Yeah.
right there
Yeah.
with vintage and thrifting, but admittedly, there's nothing that takes the place of silk. Well, there's some rayons that come close, you know what I mean? There's a silk satin, there's just, even if it's polyester, you still sweat.
But I think what I'm saying to you is, it's not the material, it's what you do with it. It's not the cloth. It's
No, I hear you.
yeah, the cloth is okay. I mean, you know, I was a judge at over the last summer, I was a judge at Ratner Hunt, and I had on a rowing blazer, yellow and cream awning stripe that I found at the Salvation Army. A man drove up in his Phantom Bentley. It's gorgeous. Tuxedo. It was a tuxedo because it was black down the center and the sides were all cream. Gorgeous. He got out, he had a Versace blazer on, Versace trouser, nice, beautiful shirt with the Versace medallion, the shoes. He had on at least $4,000 worth of clothing. We were standing side by side and people said to me, "Oh my God, you look amazing. Oh my God, where did you get this jacket from?" I always tell them. I was like, Salvation Army. The guy that the tuxedo, he was just like, "Arr." It's something that you have, right? And if you take what you have, and had a so she already knew I can make flowers. I make flowers very well. So everything she had had some kind of flower or some kind of, she realized that although she wasn't accepted, although all these barriers were there, it didn't stop her from perfecting, improving, and doing her craft, which is why we still have that legacy. You know, we're still talking about that. So I'm just saying to you, yeah, there's nice, expensive fabric. Yeah, and I'm a fabric snob. I love really great textiles, right? But I also know that I have seen things that were uber expensive that look like crap. They just look like crap. Yeah, and I know people who didn't have a fraction of that, who could take a simple piece of black wool and make a column and it was just exquisite and timeless and elegant. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody who came. Thank you, Chris Day, for all your work. Thank you, David Gerbeck.
Didn't work out too well, did it?
Yes. Oh.